Welcome to this installment of I Am the End of the Words, and I'm very excited about this one because if you will watch my other videos, you heard me say that I adored this book, and I did adore this book. I still adore this book. I was ranting about it to a family member at a party this weekend. I can't get over how much I enjoyed this book. This book is the 2013 offering from Charlie Lovett, The Bookman's Tale, a novel of obsession. And there's no better subtitle for it than Obsession. I'm obsessed with it. There's obsession in it. Let's get into it. Our main character is Peter Byerly, and he is an antiquarian. Oh, that's one of the words that messes with my mouth. An antiquarian bookseller. There we go. Probably won't say it again. He's an antiquarian bookseller who also restores books. It opens in 1995. Shortly after he loses his wife, and he's struggling. He doesn't know what to do. He's kind of lost in life. He has a list on his refrigerator from a doctor telling him what he should do. He should meet friends, and he should go out and reinvest in his hobbies and kind of reconnect with family members. But he's not really doing any of it. He's just wasting away, slowly trying to get reacclimated to what a life without the love of his life is. Eventually, he builds up enough confidence to pop back in a bookstore, one of the bookstores that he would deal with, and just perusing the shelves, he sees a book, opens it up, and there is a watercolor painting of a woman who really resembles his wife, and he's so caught off guard by it and so shocked. But the book it was in, he doesn't want to buy because it was overpriced. So he slips it in another book, a cheaper book, buys that book with the watercolor, and then starts investigating the watercolor. So 1995 is present day. He lives in Great Britain now. I believe he was living in Wales at the time. There's a lot takes place in Kingham in this as well. Okay, second timeline we focus on here. There's three main timelines that we focus on in this book, and usually the chapters go bang, bang, bang through all three of them, alternating. The second timeline starts off in 1983 with Peter in college in Ridgefield, North Carolina. It chronicles his social awkwardness, which I can relate to. It chronicles his ineptitude to kind of meet people, and he just wants to just get lost in things. He's tried to find hobbies, but nothing really spoke to him until he discovered the special collection section in the library at the college, and he began working it. Then he began learning about the preservation of books, and that really got him involved. He eventually meets Amanda Ridgefield, not the name that she uses though. But it later becomes known that she is the Ridgefield of the very wealthy family that the town is named after. But he meets her. It chronicles him meeting her in college, it just firing on all cylinders. The romance is unbelievable. It's unbelievably written. The feelings could not be expressed better in this, about this romance between the two and how they feel about each other. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The third timeline we focus on starts in 1592. I know, bear with me. It may seem a little bit of a big bite, but it doesn't focus on events as a whole in that year. It focuses on one thing, and it follows this one thing through the timeline, and that is the Robert Greene book, The Pandosto, which is the book that Shakespeare's Winter's Tale is based on. We're kind of told of how Shakespeare was viewed in 1592 prior to him writing anything, really. Just being like a budding playwright, if you will. And it's kind of some of the playwrights sitting around a bar talking about how he's just a hack, if you will. Bounce back to present day. Peter's exploring more of the photograph. It's signed BB. I think he doesn't know what that means. So he's going and looking at places where his wife, who was a lover of art and a lover of painting, going to places where he thought she would go in order to figure out what this is. Eventually, the book is traced to or the picture is traced to a guy who's writing a book. He meets like a reporter who's writing a book. No, sorry, he meets like a reporter who, I don't think she's a reporter. I don't know what I think her job was a little muddy, but she's at least a liaison between this author who's writing a book about watercolor by the mysterious person who she doesn't want to give too much information on. He eventually digs around a little more, and finds out that it's still up in the air. We got to figure it out. We go back to the 80s. We see more of their relationship, which is just so marvelously written. I can't express how great the Peter and Amanda relationship in this is. It seems so real, yet also it's a storybook romance. But I mean, storybook things do happen in real life. So it seems down to earth, but also very fairy tale like. It seems too good to be true. We then jump forward from 1592, and we eventually follow the Pandosto all the way through the timeline from Bookseller to Shakespeare. Shakespeare read it and wrote in all the margins different things. Eventually, the bookseller that let him borrow it stole it back, and then it was traded, sold. Eventually, we get to we're in the late 80s where Peter and Amanda are hot and heavy, if you will. I sound like an old man. And they start to talk about marriage. They talk about kids. It's still a very fairy tale like romance, a very fairy tale like relationship, but grounded somewhere. I don't know. I can't explain where, but for me, it was definitely grounded somewhere. Back to present day, where he's still investigating. Eventually goes and gets called to this house to look at some books that need to be sold. They're trying to liquidate some of their assets so they can, get back in the black, if you will. And an ancient copy of the Pandosto is one of the books to be sold. And it wasn't just one that they were supposed to sell. The man didn't show it to her. His sister actually came into the room, opened the box and said never to be sold, and showed him, said, you have a week to make us an offer, we'll find somebody else. He ends up taking it. The inside cover, one of the last owners was BB. And he's so confused. He doesn't see the connection, doesn't understand what's happening. But he also needs to prove the legitimacy of it. He needs to see if it's a real copy or if it's a forgery. Back to the 80s, where Peter wants to get Amanda one of the best birthday presents, and her birthday falls on Halloween. One of the best birthday presents ever. So he finds one of her favorite books with one of her favorite illustrations, Back of the North Wind, and it's an old beat-up copy. Buys it for $1. As you know, Peter's been working for restoring books for the college. This is his first undertaking he does himself, and it might just be me because I love things like this. I love books to this point, but he's just there. The author is describing how to restore this book, and it seems magical to me. Like there's almost glitter floating around on the pages because it's such a magical experience of using different knives to get to cut the leather for the everything, the hand threading of the spine. Everything about it is crazy to me, and I want to know how to do it. I love books. It's amazing the way it was talked about. Honestly, I was almost out of breath by the time I was done reading it because I loved reading about it so much. Now, like I said, you may not enjoy that as much as I did, but it was something that really grabbed onto me, and it really showed his care for Amanda and how much thought and how much effort he put into it. Eventually, he gives her the book, obviously, and it goes very smoothly. But back to present day, where he is still investigating the Pandosto, still trying to figure out if it's legitimate or not. Goes and meets this author. And when he meets the author, he's sleeping in the barn, and the author gets murdered. So now there's a murder involved. There's forgery. Is it a forgery? There's murder. Is it a murder? The murder looked like it was trying to be blamed on him. He finds out that there's all kind of backroom dealings involving this book, and it's just a constant shitstorm about this Pandosto. But he does consider it his holy grail. If it is real, it is a holy grail. It'll prove who was right between the Oxfordians and the Stanfordians. And if you don't know what that is, it's the people who claim that Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare's book versus Shakespeare's works. People who say that Shakespeare didn't exist versus the people that believe Shakespeare did exist. And this book, with Shakespeare's notations in the margins, would prove true. It would prove that Shakespeare did exist. It follows the Pandosto the whole way to 1878, I think, is one of the last incantations where we find out what family has it. We find out the family tree and how it got passed to who and what happened. There was blackmail, there was adultery, there was just all these crazy, just a wonderfully weaved story, a soap opera, if you will, about this family and the broken family. And Peter eventually finds out, who the book belonged to. I don't know. This is kind of a newer book. I guess it's 3 years old. I don't know. I don't know if I want to spoil it or not. It's a wonderful read. I'm not going to spoil the wrap up of the puzzle, if you will, but I am going to continue. And one of the things that struck me most about this book is usually if you have a book where a loved one dies, it happens in the first couple pages. And you're like, okay, I see why he's messed up, or I see the hurt. We knew Amanda was dead going in. We didn't find out how Amanda died or the circumstances until there were only 30 pages left. So you have present day Peter. We know Amanda's dead. We see him dealing with it. We see how much it affects him. We learn all that. We also see their budding relationship. We see them meeting. We see them growing as a couple. We see them growing independently and together. And we see the love, and we live that with them through their story. And then when they finally do explain, he finally does explain how Amanda died, and it is just it's heart-wrenching because you feel like you're so much more invested in her because she was a living character in the book. Even though it was a separate timeline, it wasn't present day, and you knew she was dead, you didn't know how she died. And when you read how she died, it was very emotional, and it's heart-wrenching. It leaves you with almost a sense of loss yourself because you knew she was dead, but you lost the character. And maybe that part of the book, that timeline where she was still alive, technically she was still alive. So even though she was dead in the present day, in the book, she was still alive. So when she died, you got to know her, and you're feeling the same loss that Peter did almost. I told you, I love this book. I told you, I could go on about this book forever because I want somebody to read this so I could talk to them about it because I loved it. After Amanda's death, we find out about the book, yada, yada, yada. Yes, I yada, yada, yada. Yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you. And, I'm not going to say everything gets wrapped up in a nice little bow, but you do get answers. All questions are answered, which would have bothered me if they weren't. But The Bookman's Tale, a Novel of Obsession by Charlie Lovett. Wow. I'm obsessed. I adore this book more than you could even know. This book is a 9.5 out of 10 rating from me. Somebody please read this book. I'll buy it for you. It's that good. I enjoyed this book that much. If you didn't like it, if you read this and didn't like it, talk to me about it. I want to know. I just want to talk about it. I like this book. I love this book. One of my favorite books I read all year so far. Not just, one of the books I read all year, plus one of my favorite books I've ever read. I really enjoyed this. I don't know if I have much to say about it. I feel like a salute wouldn't be right. A thumbs up's not really right. I don't know what's right. I look like this, so I can't really blow a kiss. I don't know. I'm lost. I'm lost on what to do. I am obsessed, though. I am obsessed. I love this book. Read this book. Read it. Thank you. Read it. It's good.